Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our afternoon session entitled Making Connections, Meet the Board. This session will be facilitated by our Executive Director, Scott Nine. Scott, if you are ready, you can take it away.
All right. Well, this is going to be a fun exercise to get to tell a little bit about some of the IDEA board members for folks who want to know more about them, and then having a few board members present to be able to share a little bit about themselves and a little bit about the board. And if other folks jump on or have questions who are watching the stream, we can do that as well. So I'll briefly take folks through. There's some slides for folks who are in the live hangout. You can click the Google Drive icon and pop up a little slideshow, which has some fun photos in it. And if folks are viewing in the Google page, you can click the slideshow and flip through it as we go as well. So we'll jump in and we'll talk about people a little bit, and then we'll talk about the board as a group. And call that good. IDEA's current board president for tick, another week or two, but still remaining on the board is Santiago Gallardo Rincon. And I love this photo, which I found through Santiago's Facebook feed. It is just an amazing picture. And this is his little boy Kai, and to talk just very briefly about Santiago is that he's someone who is very involved in educational movements in Mexico, and he recognizes Gabriel Camara as one of his primary mentors. I didn't pull it ahead of time, but there's a beautiful interview of Gabriel Camara in AERA's Lead the Change series, and it tells some of the work that Santiago was a part of in Mexico. And Santiago came to study at Harvard University and was a doctoral student in educational policy and leadership and instructional practice. And IDEA got connected to him through that work as he worked with Dr. Richard Elmore, partner to Kirsten Olsen, IDEA's prior board president. And as we began talking, there was just very fast connections about the studies he'd been doing. His doctoral work is on social movements in education and the history of social movements in general, and how that relates to understanding social movements for transformative educational change. And he's just been an amazing person to be a leader in the board and to show up in a way that I think is very very human, very grounded, but also rooted in looking at research. A favorite quote, there are a few that I really like, but recently Santiago was talking about how we all come to value relationships as outcomes, that we understand that for social movements to work effectively, we have to come to value that those connections are the oxygen that movements run on, and we often don't. We see them as a sidebar or a secondary thing and not primary. And so he couldn't be here today, but happy for him to be the president. I should say the other thing about Santiago's work people would be interested in is he currently has been working with Michael Fullan and Andy Hargreaves. And for folks not familiar with Michael Fullan or Andy Hargreaves' work, very highly regarded educational researchers and folks who do a lot of educational consulting with big districts and systems. And it's been nice to have that linkage, both Santiago being to share work that's happening in Ideas Network there, but also to share back some of the great work and learning that's come out of Michael Fullan and Andy Hargreaves' work as well. So the next person I'd like to share about is on this call. So I'll give a brief introduction, but I'll let Kwesi speak for himself. Kwesi Rollins is our incoming board president, and he also has a full-time job, which we interrupt quite often, where he's the director of leadership programs at IEL, the Institute for Educational Leadership. And I personally got to meet Kwesi for the first time at a gathering called the North Dakota Study Group, which is ndsg.org if you want to learn more about it, but it's a gathering of progressive educators. And The connection there was actually that Kwesi had been working with another group of educators on something called the Community Learning Exchange, which for many years, with support from the Kellogg Foundation, was linking different groups working at how to build capacity for community change and how to think about what collective leadership is. And very exciting to have Kwesi have joined our board and now to step into this leadership role. And I'm going to turn it over to Kwesi to share a little bit about himself. I won't give away what he's good at dancing, but I won't give away what type of dance. We'll see if he'll share that and anything else he wants to share. So Kwesi.
Well, hello everyone. Thanks, Scott. And I have now reached. In a couple of weeks, I'll be chair of the board, and there'll be no other position that Scott can trick me into joining after that. So it's a pleasure to be here, and you know, I don't know, Scott put something in my tea or my Diet Coke or something, and he's just strung me along ever since he met me. But it all started with a great conversation, and I love the work of IDEA. I believe in making connections and strengthening each other's work and strengthening networks, and that's so much about what IDEA has been about, and that's what I've personally been about, mentoring and being mentored, connecting and being connected with. And that's really, I think, this, you know, the broader solution to the ills that we face in terms of education in this country, and many other ills across this whole planet. So I'm happy to be here. Not much else to say. Love to dance salsa, merengue, bachata. You know, I've been a dancing fool since I was 12 or 13, so that continues. And now I dance to music other than just R&B and etc. So that's it.
Thank you, Kwesi. So next up is IDEA's secretary, also an organizer, and I'll say a deep clown in the fun ways that a clown can be both fun and deep. But Natalia Rosado, who is from Puerto Rico and now working with Nuestra Escuela as well, got connected through Nuestra Escuela and IDEA being in Puerto Rico, and has been an organizer and a board member and now our secretary, and continues to grow in her own leadership in the organization, and she's finishing her studies at the University of Puerto Rico, and I will turn it over to her to share a little bit about herself and thinking about herself in the board role and anything else you want to share, Natalia.
Good, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Well, yeah, I right now don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's my official work title right now, but I'm working in some sort of way in Nuestra Escuela doing stuff, and it's been really fun. They just opened the new center in Loíza with the Ricky Martin Foundation, and it's beautiful, and Ricky Martin has been all up on me today and yesterday. And well, not up on me, maybe it's the other way around. But I've been next to him, and he smells good.
Wow.
So that's how close I was. But yeah, I'm a board member I've been a board member for the past 2 years, I think, and it's been a nice ride. Like, I feel that I've grown. Wait, I think I'm screaming. Okay. I feel that I've grown a lot, like, into my role as a board member. At first, I was kind of weary about what that even meant, or if I was capable of doing it, but it's been very, like everything that IDEA does, it's been very welcoming, and I've been able to grow and learn, and now I know about stuff that before I was like, what does that mean? And I don't know if I'm going to continue being in the circus or not. I think I won't be. I'm going to pursue what I love. But it's been a very nice 2 years of doing that, and I think it just gave me a different skill set or something. It made me see life in a different way and appreciate things that I didn't really see before. And yeah, so I think right now I'm focusing on, you know, my collaboration with IDEA as an organizer through the planning of LBS and as part of the Puerto Rico Boricua team. And it's exciting that this is a moment of transitions in the board as well as an idea as an organization. I think it will be different. Like, of course it will be different, but I think it's going to be really good. And I'm excited for whatever is going to come, and I am open to questions. I love to dance. I love to dance. It's my passion. I haven't danced in a long while, so I'm feeling kind of sad, but I'll get back to it soon. I'm dancing tango recently. And really right now the project I'm working on is making the apartment amazingly cool. So that's what's up with me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Natalia. Gracias. Next up is Robert Davis, who couldn't join us for this call. Robert serves as the treasurer of the board and has a really interesting background, and I think brings a lot to the organization because he's not immersed in kind of education or education organizing in the way that many of the rest of us are or have been, but also very interested in thinking about education. Part of the story of his background that's not in the little bio that's typed here is that he had gotten a degree in education, but was kind of surprising to himself. I think he would say he was doing quite well in the kind of financial services sector, and found it difficult to stop doing that in order to focus on the education work that he'd studied, but had always been something he was interested in. And when he retired from his kind of full-time work, although he's now got his own kind of company that he's pursuing, he thought about committing himself to serve on 2 boards. One of those he chose to be an organization that works with seniors and folks in the end of life, and the other one he wanted to be focused on thinking about young people and communities and education. And we were lucky to get connected with him, and he's brought real nice stability and good questions and very practical questions about how to be sustainable as an organization. He's donated some of his own resources to the project, and we've held a board meeting at one of his homes, and we have enjoyed the kinds of, I think, criticality that he's brought. And he's also, I think, really enjoyed learning a lot more about the educational landscape, and pretty committed to what the project is that IDEA is onto. And I wish he were on here so folks could get to know him a little bit more, but at some future moment, nice to have more opportunities for people to get to know Robert. But I personally really appreciate the role that he's played in trying to help us navigate challenging financial times, and always really thinking about what's most important to our work in ways that I think maybe people aren't aware of because he's a board member and maybe a bit more disconnected from the work in ways that other people aren't. And so just really want to appreciate him since he's not on here. The next person is someone who a lot of folks know and has been is a co-founder and former staff member and board member and mom and now doing some great work in Mississippi. And Malia Dicker has really been someone who I think, if you looked at what IDEA is and is shaped by, is a huge part of the kind of ecosystem of what we're about, the way we think about change, approaches to collaboration, thinking about messaging and narrative. Her fingerprints are all over what we're all up to together, and she continues to be someone who I think really brings a nice steady leadership, and she also serves on the board of several other organizations, including Public Allies. And I'll turn it over to Malia to just say a few words about whatever you're interested in sharing, Malia, and thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry I was a little bit late. I was waiting to be called in, and then I realized I needed to click the link. So, hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm here in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm originally from California, but moved out here about 5 years ago. My husband is from the Jackson area, and we have a 1-year-old son together. I see that you pulled that picture for my biopic, which from kickball last night. He's won. So that's a large part of what my life is right now, is raising my son. And I don't work directly in education anymore. I work for Visit Mississippi. It's the State Division of Tourism. But my heart and my passion is education. And so part of my involvement in IDEA was it grew out of my own educational experience, because I felt like my schooling, I was good at school, but I felt like I got really caught up in the game and the system. And then when I graduated, I had no idea how to operate without a roadmap and instructions and awards and teachers praising me and all those kinds of things. And so I had to make my own compass and my own roadmap. And I'm still unlearning what I learned in school to a large extent. So I'm really interested in spaces that affirm students' passions and their own wisdom that they naturally have, and helps them grow that. So I helped start an organization called Spark out in California that is an apprenticeship program for middle school youth, and that has grown beyond me. It's really amazing to see it grow beyond my co-founder, who continued to run the organization for several years after I left. And then IDEA was on staff. Dana and I were the first 2 official staff. I remember the moment where we launched the website for the first time. We stayed up till probably 3 in the morning, going back and forth with changes, and then here we go, launched it, and that was, we were off and running. And I've been really fortunate to be part of this family. I really consider the IDEA folks my family. It's been wonderful, even though we're all over the country, to meet up at conferences and have them over for dinner when they're in Jackson and things like that. What else? I love being on the board. It teaches me new things every time we meet. And I'm very excited for all the new faces. We're adding some folks to the board pretty soon, and then the organizers. I'm excited to find out who new folks are. And even with the executive director changing, it will be so hard and to see Scott go, because he's been such a core part of the fabric of this organization. But it is a totally new chapter for IDEA, and I think that will be a positive transition for us in so many ways, just a chance for us to reevaluate our messaging and how we tell our story and the people we're able to reach. And we're fortunate that Scott will stay on the board with us, and we'll keep growing from there. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Malia. So your partner in crime at that 3 a.m. push and go on the website is the one and only Dana Bennis, and I'll just share, because Dana, you're probably the one of the more known folks to people who might be watching this, but there may be people watching who have no idea. So Dana organized a national conference in the U.S. in 2003. It was the first time that an international conference called the International Democratic Education Conference had come to the United States. And Dana, you have to tell me, 400, 500 people, something like that, came to New York, and it actually led to a whole outgrowth of its own conference that's called the Aero Conference, and a kind of North American gathering of folks doing different types of educational work. And after that, Dana and Malia and some other people raised money and had an opportunity, some of them, to go to Israel and to travel and see work there. And Dana has pursued a kind of long study of thinking about both educational alternatives and the kind of public purpose of education. What's it mean for people to be kind of powerful agents of their own learning, but in relationship to their community? And I first met him in 2008 in Canada, and he's nurtured IDEA in a lot of different roles, often the person behind the scenes doing little tiny things to make all kinds of connections happen. And I'm going to turn it over to Dana to say a little bit more, and whatever you want to offer up as put your board member hat on, Dana.
Got it. Thank you for that, Scott. Yeah, I'm really excited to have a chance just to hear. I've just been loving hearing others speak so far, it's trying to think of how or what to share exactly. And I think I was listening to Malia, and I think part of that, for the story of your experiences in school, Malia, I mean, mine are similar and also different, but I think a lot of what I've put into IDEA and why is really is connected to my own learning and my own experiences in school, and both in school and then afterwards starting to work with young people. But I think I learned a lot from Kirsten Olsen, who, speaking of board, was really our founding board chair, and is now close ally but cycled off the board. And her book, Writing About Wounds of School, and that has helped me to put more language behind the wounds that come from all different kinds of schooling, and myself in terms of. For me, I think it was a real disconnect. I was lost and disconnected from really my own interests and passions, and a real kind of robbed of that chance to have that earlier in my life. And it's led me to the point that it's about connection, and wanting to how do we create more connection in the world in general, but for young people especially, creating opportunities that young people are connected to their own self. And having a chance to be connected to the wisdom of the world around them, the wisdom of nature, the wisdom of their communities, and so that, I think, is my own motivation for doing this work, and my excitement about doing this work. Partly, I also think it's this other phrase from an ally, especially in the beginning of our founding IDEA, Yaakov Hecht, educator, and he's talked a lot about that. Really, a lot of times those working in education, for me, I think in part, it's our unfinished business. We're trying to right the wrongs done to us and trying to bring that and change the experiences for others. And so that's part of what I'm excited about. And I think, Malia was talking also about Spark, and I served on some other boards, and I think they all function in different ways. And what I love about the IDEA board is that I feel like it's kind of really rooted in the organization and the culture and the values of the organization, and really, I think that a lot of work has happened through staff, through board members, and through organizers and allies. I think in really creating a real seamless connection, and that the board is not just this other entity that we don't know who it is and we don't know what they actually decide. But actually, there's a lot of organizers and board members and staff. Functioning really like a cohesive whole, and I think that's generally really been the hope and the goal. At least I'm hoping that that's what we've been doing, and I hope for trying to do more of that. And yeah, I think my own last year has been lots of learning on being a new father now, and I think that's the other thing. That's part of my life, and so I learn a lot from my son Miles, and I learn a lot from the silent board member of IDEA, my partner Julie Hill, who has been a silent board member on many things, as we talked through so much. So yeah, I'm honored to be with the IDEA community, and toss it back to you, Scott.
Your invoking of the silent board partner made me think about the picture. I almost picked you and Julie. That's good. Of course, we could extend. I think Malia used the word family, and I think it's appropriate in the sense. I think that we draw on lots of resources, and some of us show up to meetings, but we're pulling in lots of different inputs and ideas from people as we try to do the work. So I also serve as a board member, and I'm excited to continue doing that. So I like thinking about me not leaving but transitioning to a different spot. And,
so everyone's given story. You've given stories to introduce everyone else. I think a little context maybe, and others can pipe in perhaps. But I'll just say when I first met Scott in Vancouver. In 2008, and it was I don't know even how we met. I think maybe someone said like, "Oh, you should talk to Dana about this" or something like that, and then we just kind of started chatting. And this is part of the reason, and I think we're going to hear and talk to Jonah as well, that Jonah and Malia, myself, and others were in Vancouver, was in part to start this conversation about let's we really got to fill some gaps and start working on some kind of work together in what became IDEA. And unbeknownst to any of us, Scott was there. And in fact, Scott and I had been at several conferences in previous years and never met, I think, or at least one or two. But in Vancouver, we got into talking, and I think the next day was that you, Scott, were about to give a workshop and talking about, what are the conditions of change? What are the kind of boundary conditions that we need if we actually want to work together and create a different reality in education? And how can we do that in a more cohesive, coordinated fashion? And so you were like, interesting questions. We just had a meeting this morning talking about doing that exact thing. And so it was just, I think, I think we met, instead of going to a workshop, we met the next morning for an hour and kind of rapidly got as deep as we could in terms of getting into this conversation. And so I think it's just been really straight downhill and it kind of a wonderful, merging of ideas and people. And so I think that was just the start of a great time and relationship and work together. So I'll toss it over to you unless anyone else wants to pipe in.
Great introduction.
Thanks, Dana. The moral of that story, Kwesi, is that you weren't the first one to get tricked. and perhaps I'm tricking on Dana as a proxy.
Yeah, no, I think you have refined your skills since then, so we got to watch.
I'm most from a slideshow perspective, I'm most excited to share this picture of some art I did when I was in Korea. I had a really amazing time at the IDEC in Korea. It felt a little full circle-ish to me to be invited to be there. It's certainly humbling. But after speaking, I got invited. They were encouraging everybody to do this kind of artwork as an expression. And I had just the best time in the world making this little piece of art, which I've never really done something like that, quite like that before. So I really enjoyed it. And what it made me, the reason I put it up there was this inside circle is a very old Korean symbol that is about humanity, spirit, and earth, and ways that they connect to each other. And when I think about idea where it's at and the board, I think about those three things. You're really thinking about people, about grounding, and about spirit. And we often talk about the work in different ways, but I think in a lot of ways we've tried, and I hope we'll continue to try to build a board that tries to balance those three different kinds of energies in terms of thinking about what shapes an organization. And I've personally learned so much being a board member, and I'm excited to get to play in that role to the extent that it's useful for the next couple of years. I hope as we move through this transition time that I can step back from the role of being a director, but be able to continue to provide some support and some connections as things unfold. But I'm also excited to take that step back and make that transition. The other thing I was going to say is just I love the idea that we all found things on a daily basis. And I love the idea of thinking at a moment of transition that we're not just adding new people, we're adding new founders to something. And it's not just at the board level. I think that organizers are as responsible for idea as any board member. And that's not just true in terms of financial dollars, but in terms of how people share and talk about things. And that if idea really is about a family and network of connections, it is that only to the extent that it uses an organizational structure to try to cause those things to happen. And it's been fun to do that, and it's fun to watch the organization itself grow and change, and I'm excited about the changes that are ahead, and inviting some new leadership forward. And so that's enough from me. The last person in the slideshow is not officially a voting member of the board, but is someone who plays a very key role for the board and for the staff and for organizers, and that's Jonah Canner. He's been at every board meeting I think I've ever been to. And we, about a year ago, finally were able to kind of prioritize and give an actual a consulting description and a small consulting fee to honor the work that Jonah has done. We call that role water. Some organizations maybe formally call something like this ombudsperson, but we think this is a much cooler title and a much refined idea. But it really is about someone who's helping us reflect on the organization over time, helps make connections between people, can help do some problem solving as needed. It's been great to have Jonah in that role, and I think important for us to recognize that, and that's in part about who Jonah is and what he brings, but I think also something that I hope is a role that can also at some point transition to someone else and stay alive in the organization. I think having someone paying attention in that way that doesn't have a structural role is really important. And so, Jonah, I'll turn it over to you to say a few words if you want.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. I wasn't really thinking that I was even going to be able to be on this thing, so I didn't think I was going to say anything. But I will just say that it's, for me, it's pretty remarkable that the kind of role that I, as a person whose kind of background is as youth worker, camp counselor, mentor type figure, have the kind of skill set that is encompassed in all of those roles, be kind of seen and understood as important in an organizational structure. I think that a lot of when I think about what I do outside of IDEA, in terms of running, designing, supporting experiential education programs with and for mostly young people, the way that kind of the role is talked about is, guide standing on the side. So I'm standing with the young people who are moving and going through the experience, and I'm with them. I'm in their ear. I'm having different lenses on what's going on, and able to see things a little bit differently. Not to direct, not to kind of force, but to quasi in some ways trick, and bring up some of the questions in ways that are not things that are kind of being seen and talked about from the regular lenses and angles that people bring to these kinds of conversations. So I really enjoyed being in at board meetings and particularly bringing some of the meta reflections and the kind of big picture, where are we lens that isn't kind of constrained by thinking about the kind of day-to-day functionings. And so I've really enjoyed getting to bring that, and that it's valued in IDEA, I think, says a lot about what the priorities of the organization as a community are, and that they are about a broader understanding about accountability.
Thanks, Jonah. And I wanted to just quickly kind of take people through kind of what is the role of the IDEA board, and what's the kind of quick review of the process the board uses, and share one resource for folks. And then I have a quick question for folks to respond to. Everyone doesn't have to respond, but a kind of fun kind of ending closure question, and then we'll wrap this session up. The quick summary of IDEA's board is really caught up in the ideas of being the elder, the asker, fundraiser, strategist, and legally responsible entity. And I'll just break that down very briefly. Elder, small e, not necessarily tied to age, but that grounded sense of thinking about the larger ethos of the organization, what its mission is, and what it's trying to cause in the world, and to be a place to be both a sounding board, a friendly critic, and a nurturer of what we're trying to do over time in a way that stays out of the day-to-day weeds of things, but can kind of pull back and ask good questions. The asker and fundraiser roles are tied together, but that's about being responsible for the financial health of the organization and being willing. Every board member is asked to sign an agreement that they'll make giving to the organization one of their top 3 giving priorities. We don't have a give-get policy, so there's not a requirement that someone gives a certain amount, but there is the sense that it's a priority and that folks are willing to talk about their own personal giving and leverage their own networks and friends and colleagues and use their roles to help figure out ways that might support the organization to be financially healthy to pursue what we're trying to cause. There's a legal responsibility to being on the board in the sense that we are a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, and there are legal realities and hard choices to be made. And the board is the entity that is overall responsible for the organization, and that includes being the people that would, kind of make final decisions about hiring or firing an executive director, and to give oversight overall to the operations and human resources of the organization. And then the last piece is kind of strategist, and I think we've tried to think about that in broad terms of bringing in people's different skills, whether that's around messaging or policy, around movement building, but also around how to build a healthy organization, how to raise money, and trying to always think about how to balance those different skill sets with the group that is diverse and different from one another, and it brings a lot of strength and alignment as well. The board over the last 6 months has created a nice resource for folks called Idea Board Listening. It's a Gmail address, and it's an outlet for folks who are in the organization in any capacity who want to be able to connect with board members. It gives access for folks to do that, again, outside of organizational structure. We think that's important to have available in addition to folks like Jonah in his role. We have a number of ways that the board meets. The simplest way to keep track of it is 4 primary meetings. That's an annual meeting of a couple of days, usually in the winter months, and then in the fall and spring, a kind of day-long meeting with a kind of optional dinner, and then a series of phone calls over the summer. The board does a lot of little ad hoc calls, and certainly right now the board's working very hard through the executive director transition process, so a lot of time and energy being put there, but that's the core structure of the board. The board approves the organization's budget every spring, if folks are interested in more, they can certainly email, and we could share more in terms of our organizational bylaws or background structure or approach, but that's kind of a quick version of it for folks who are interested. The fun question I thought I'd ask people before we get off is just as folks think about the board and the year ahead, what's a opportunity / challenge that you see for Idea as an organization or for the board that you're excited about and want to say just a tiny bit about? And everyone doesn't have to answer, but if you feel inspired, maybe a couple people will share for a few more minutes.
I can say something. I'm excited about how, because in my mind, Idea as I have it conceptually can't really change that much because of its structure that everyone lives in different places and stuff. And I'm really excited to see how it'll shift or change or not, or just, I don't know, evolve and become something else as a new executive director comes in. And I learned this really good thing from Anaides. Every time she interviews someone to work at the school, she looks for many things, but she looks for one quality that the person has that can bring and add to the team that already exists. So you have a bunch of people that can do many stuff, but they bring this essential quality that makes the team just awesome. So I'm excited to still have Scott on board and see how that will go. And it's going to be the same thing, but have him in the board and not have him as an executive director. I think after time of reflection and taking it in that we've all had, I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see what this new person that we don't know yet is going to bring.
Thanks, Natalia. What's somebody else thinking about?
Scott, this is Heath.
Hey, Heath.
How are you guys doing?
Fine.
I just wanted to know, how does and maybe I missed a portion, I'll look again at the meetup here about the board in the future, but I just wanted to know, like, what are the top interests of the board in terms of advancing their behavior, modernizing their behavior? I know you guys are very modern and focused in that sense, but are there new things you want to try? What's new out there that they're talking about what boards can do, and how do you all brainstorm through that as a board?
I'm leaving that one open for anybody who wants to respond to.
Well, we're trying to bring on board members onto a video on-air hangout.
Pretty good. Pretty good start.
I was about to answer hot yoga until he said new things to try out as a board, so I have to drop that answer, but
that's just new things personally for you.
But Leah, I wonder if you'd say, because you get to experience some very different board, maybe some similar board cultures and dynamics too. But when you think about how people approach boards, there are things we might be very conscious about what we're choosing to do explicitly, and there may be some things we're doing almost functionally because of the culture of idea that we may not be quite explicitly tearing apart and saying, oh, we do this as a board.
Yeah.
I wonder what you see as you think about Heath's question.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I'm part of the Public Allies board, and the organization's been around for more than 20 years, and the board is pretty formal. I mean, we all know each other and things like that. We're Facebook friends, some of us, but the actual meeting, you dress up, you sit in a conference room, and it's kind of what you imagine as a board meeting, which is fine. IDEA operates totally differently. We have more of a retreat setting where we can basically wear casual clothes and be comfortable, but really kick around ideas and brainstorm, and there's a structure to it, but also a flow of open idea exchange, and we really know each other, like I said, as a family, and so we bring a lot more of our personal selves, and check-ins are built into the meeting and things like that Public Allies and other boards, I think, don't have, because they get down to business right away. It's just a different way of operating. And I think with that comes the spirit of experimentation, and if someone has, like the idea for Google Hangouts on air or things like that we want to try as a board, or different ways of, we do mostly consensus, and that's worked for us as far as, we take a vote with Public Allies and probably use Robert's Rules of Order and that kind of thing, do motions to approve proposals and seconds and take minutes and all those formal things. An idea, I think there's a lot of trust that goes on, and I think that informs a lot of the way we operate. Is that helpful, Scott?
Worked for me. To leave Heath to make his own conclusions.
Oh, yes.
I liked it. There's a book called Rework. It's an interesting book, but it's comes from the tech land. It's folks are familiar with Basecamp or Highrise. The company that makes that is called 37 Signals. And Malia, I think I might have learned about this book from you. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But I really love it, partly because I think it's so good anytime you read anything that kind of tears apart assumptions about how things should work. One of my favorite things in the book is it says, don't make strategic plans, make strategic guessing, because the environment changes so fast. Anybody who tells you they have a plan is lying to you, because it's going to change a year from now anyway. There's a kind of thirst for trying to get real in a way that I really appreciate, not just in the book, but I think that ideas are different. We're doing something different, but I think the board, through Kirsten's leadership, through Santiago's leadership, the board as a whole, we've Justo, Mendez Aramburu, we've tried to figure out how do we balance being super pragmatic and effective, or actually believe that being pragmatic and effective comes from being in really good relationship, and that by figuring out what kinds of structures really serve us well, and also how do we, not necessarily just accept habits about how a board should act or be, has put us in a pretty good place. And it doesn't mean there's not growth. And we're often talking, to be super transparent. Like we had a conversation this last spring about, do we keep this culture and dynamic, or should we, go towards more formality, because we might be able to get some folks who could bring more financial resources to the table if we didn't ask for such an investment of time and energy. And I think we're constantly trying to balance those tensions between how to be responsible to the overall health of an organization, how to help its financial well-being, who can engage at what kinds of levels, and also for the kind of culture that we've built. So maybe that gives you a little bit more. We're headed towards the end of time. We got a couple minutes left. New President Kwesi or anybody else, any kind of final thoughts for this kind of introduction to the board, or anybody want to say any parting words?
Well, I think the IDEA board, and I hope I'm off mute. The board reflects what's been necessary in this period for the organization, and when you've been on the planet long enough, you realize that lots of folks do things because they've always been done that way and because of tradition. And the truth is, sometimes that really works, other times it really doesn't necessarily work. And there's nothing magic about any particular way. I think we've got to, find the way that works for us. I think that the way the board has functioned in my brief period with IDEA has been important to the culture and the functioning and the growth and the nurturing and the incubation of ideas, literally ideas. And so 5 or 10 years from now, those conditions could be different. IDEA is a different kind of organization, and I think that's perhaps why the board functions in a different kind of way. And having my own board to deal with in terms of my organization, and having experienced other boards of various kinds of ways of doing business across a continuum of boards, there's a lot of ways, and some of them are really not that effective, and some of them are, they are what they are. So I think we've got a healthy board, we've got a healthy group, and it's working. And who knows, conditions can change, and we may need a different kind of board, a different kind of rhythm. But right now, it's about where it needs to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Kwesi, and thanks everybody for joining us. Crystal says there's not any questions in the Q&A, so we'll call this good. And Crystal, I'm turning it over to you to share what comes next in virtual Idea Camp land. And thank you everybody for jumping in and sharing. And I think probably the makings of a nice video stream to put up on the soon-to-be new website to run right alongside the bios and things. So thanks everybody.
All right. Great afternoon, folks. Great session. Thank you all for being on and participating and sharing about yourselves and your love and dedication to IDEA. We appreciate all the work that you do. In regards to VIC 2014 Virtual IDEA Camp, this is actually our last session for the day. We will pick up again tomorrow at 11 a.m. with our Having Fun session, and we have a lot of cool and awesome sessions in store. Showcasing as a strategy, we'll talk a little bit about budgets, funding. We'll have an open-air hangout, and we'll learn about one of the other best-kept secrets. Well, it's not a secret anymore, but best-kept secrets of IDEA, the Learning Breakthrough Series. And that is it. So if you have any questions or had trouble connecting today, feel free to send an email to cmadison@democraticeducation.org. And of course, all of these recordings will be posted to our IDEA Hub. Have a great evening, folks, and hopefully we will see you, or you will see us tomorrow. Bye. Signing off.